It's 7 o'clock, I'll call the meeting to order. Mr. Hunter, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The record show all board members are present. Mr. Board, has public notice been given?
It has. We are working off of the revised agenda from Friday, which includes additional language going into closed.
Public comment. Per policy 0167.3, anyone wishing to participate in the period of public comment must be a resident of the Richland School District, the parent or legal guardian of an enrolled district student or an enrolled district student. Speakers are not permitted to make inflammatory comments, use inappropriate language or gestures, attack specific persons, or make a specific person the subject of their remarks. Please see policy 0167.3 for a complete list of requirements and restrictions. If a person is unable to adhere to these rules, they may be directed to end their comments. Mrs. Steele?
None.
Thank you. All right, on to reports. The district administrator's report.
Okay, just a handful of reminders and updates on some upcoming dates. First of all, next Wednesday, which will be December 18th, not this coming Wednesday, but a week from Wednesday, will be our committee meeting night. Buildings, property, and transportation, along with personnel, will be at 6 p.m. Policy and curriculum will be at 7:30. And then a reminder to the board and the public that December is a month where we only have one regular scheduled board meeting, so there will not be a second board meeting of the month, which would typically be on December 23rd. As a result, our next board meeting, regularly scheduled board meeting, will be on Monday, January 13th, 2025. It was good to be able to say 2025. Next thing, reminder of the state convention on January 21st through the 24th. We need to know back from all board members on whether or not they are going to attend some or all of the convention, or if they are unable to. At this point, I've heard back from 3, unless some have given information to Ms. Steele tonight, but Ms. Troxel and Ms. Dickman are both yeses. Mr. Van Landijk is a no. The other 4, if you could let myself or Ms. Steele know before you leave tonight, I would appreciate that, so that we can get those registrations and reservations taken care of. And then I believe the last thing is a reminder that anyone interested in becoming a board member, we have a couple of elections up in November. You can pick up information and paperwork in the district office, and anybody who is wanting to be a candidate would need to return those to the district office no later than 5 p.m. on January 7th. We did have one board member, Mr. Huntimer, who represents a city seat here in the city of Richland Center. He did submit his notice of non-candidacy paperwork, and therefore there will be no incumbent on the ballot for the city seat in April. And that deadline to submit non-candidacy paperwork is 5 p.m. on December 27th, so Mr. Umbehan, you would be the other one up for an incumbent seat on that. Those are the upcoming piece of information that I wanted the board to be aware of. Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Student council report.
Girls, there's a little microphone on the front there. Just push that red button so it's on the screen so everyone can hear you.
Hello, my name is Kylie and I'm a sophomore here at Richland High School. Charlie, a freshman, and together we're representing the student council. I've been part of student council for 2 years and we're excited to share some of the things we've been working on. One of our biggest upcoming events is the wrestling concessions, which takes place on the 21st. This is our largest fundraiser of the year and involves the entire council. The event runs from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and typically raises between $5,000 to $6,000. These funds are essential for supporting our council's activities, mainly our annual period project, which costs around $2,500 each year. The funds also help us organize other events, such as homecoming.
At our most recent meeting, we discussed future projects and are excited to announce that we've decided to take over the FBLA door decorating contest this year, along with other holiday activities. This includes hosting a Christmas event where we plan to run movies and games in different rooms. The schedule for that day will be altered so that the students will have 2 hours to participate in these activities. We've also seen that our student council is growing, and we're at 31 members, with more planning to join soon. We've even been talking to middle school students about staying involved in student council in the future. This growth is exciting because it allows us to take on even bigger projects and make a bigger impact on the school community. As always, we're open to any ideas or suggestions from both the student body and the board, and we look forward to continuing our efforts to serve the school and bring people together. Thank you. Any questions?
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you. Annual safety report.
Okay, so Mr. Josem is unable to be here tonight. I did upload some additional information that had kind of a summary of what he was going to talk about. State statutes, Wisconsin Act 143 requires school boards to review certain safety documents and get an annual review of the assessments that are done throughout the school district. There were 3 events that we did, one at each building. There was an active threat drill conducted on October 23rd at both the primary school, at all 3, the primary school, the intermediate school, and the high school. They each did their own active threat. We then had a debriefing afterwards where we could listen to any concerns, and then the safety co-coordinator and the IT department or anybody else involved in maintenance and grounds addressing those needs could be aware of that. I will also let the board know that there is our continuity of organizational operations plan, or our COOP plan, that is included in administrative content in board docs, and that is specifically related to the safety procedures that we use. One of the things that we have to make sure of is that any safety protocols that we have in place as a school district, that those are kept confidential, because one of the worst things that can happen is for potential threats to understand how we would react to certain situations. And so that information is in the administrative content. You're welcome to review that. Otherwise, this does serve as our annual requirement to present to the board. I've given a very high-level overview. There's more information in the attachments. I'll try to answer any questions that you might have, but are there any questions from the board regarding our safety report? This is submitted to the Department of Justice by January 1st. Every school district in the state submits this. Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the prior meeting minutes of November 25th, 2024?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Bailey. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Van Landijk. Discussion? Mr. Bailey?
Aye.
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 Aye. And on to financial items, approval of statement of cash and invoices.
I move we approve statement of cash dated December 2nd, 2024 in Community First Bank General Checking Accounts checks number 86832 through 86871, ACH number 242502324 through 242502389, and voided check number 86796 for a net total of $877,206.09. This is for the purpose of general operating costs of the district.
Motion was made by Mr. Dowdna. Is there a second?
A second.
Seconded by Mr. Hunter. Mr. Bosworth, anything you'd like to point out or add?
Yeah, there's 3 invoices I would draw your attention to tonight. On page 5, there's an invoice that says for calendars, about $6,400. Those are 12-month traditional calendars that you can hang on a wall that the school district produces. Carrie, our communications director, does a lot of that work. Those are free to parents. They're handed out at registration. There would still be some available if people wanted to get those. Secondly, on page 7, I would draw your attention, there is invoice for about $30,000. It's a monthly legal fee. That's, our monthly legal fees are probably somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 each month. They're just, every month there are issues that we need advice on. And it just doesn't stop. And then finally, on page 8, there is an invoice on there to repair a vehicle for about $3,000. We had one of our vehicles that were, while we were transporting, or on our way to transport a student, was hit by a deer. So that has been turned into insurance for an insurance claim.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Discussion? Mr. Van Lande?
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Mrs. Steele, consent agenda items.
Motion to approve the consent agenda items. Motion to accept the donation of Piper Maker starter kit valued at approximately $245 from Piper. Donation of a Yamaha, motion to accept the donation of the Yamaha baritone saxophone valued at approximately $8,950 from Richland Center Music Boosters. Motion to accept the donation of an Amazon gift card valued at approximately $200 from the Bayard D. Hart American Legion Auxiliary Unit 13. Motion to accept the donation of 60 rechargeable graphing calculators, charging stations, and calculator storage valued at approximately $8,400 from Pepsi. And motion to waive policy 5851 to allow 2 senior partner students to attend Southwest Tech College on Monday, January 20th. That would be Martin Luther King Day, to shadow IT classes and automotive technician classes. And that is it.
I would also just add that we did not have any open enrollment requests in or out, and so even though that was listed on the agenda as a placeholder, we don't have any to act on.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Ms. Troxel. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Dickman. Discussion?
I had a question on the gift donation of calculators from Pepsi. Does that just randomly come up, or was one of our employees instrumental in seeking that donation?
High school admin, can you weigh in on that?
Yeah, yes, Jamie Jones sought out that donation.
Thank you, Mrs. Jones.
Mr. Dowda?
Aye.
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 On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to thank Piper Center Music Boosters, the Bayard DeHart American Legion Auxiliary Unit 13, and Pepsi for their generous donations. I'll make the motion to approve the modified agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Dowdna. Discussion? Mr. Huntemer?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
All right, information and discussion items, district transfers and vacancies.
Okay, so you'll see we've reduced our number of openings that we have from 6 down to 2. There are 2 openings at the time that the board book was published. We are now down to 1. We do have a 4K aide that has been hired and has accepted the offer to start working at the primary school. That is Amy Marshall. So she will be listed in the support staff and co-curricular positions in the next board book. So that leaves us with just 1 position for the district, and that is a special education transportation aide, someone to ride when we have to transport students in a van to various locations and they might need aid support. So we're looking for 1 person to do that up to 5.5 hours per day. We've reposted that position. The one that we had offered it to originally declined that offer, and so we've reopened that position. And that's our only vacancy at this point, so we're well staffed in the Richland School District right now. Any questions from the board? Thank you.
goal and priorities update.
Okay, so this is kind of an update on where we're at with our number one goal, which is to retain 80% of our students, which is a 5% decrease on open enrollment out. I first need to make a correction there. I've got it in red listed there. At a previous presentation, I had indicated that we had, in the 23-24 school year, we had 249 students open enrolling out, and that this year we were at 251. And so there was some questions, seems like things are going well, how did we increase? And looking back at DPI records, it is actually 269 that we were at last year. The 251 is accurate for this year. So our internal records have been updated to match DPI. So again, just for clarification, 269 last year, not the 249 that I had previously presented. And then we were at 251 for their third Friday count this year. Okay, so we did see a decrease in 18 students open enrolling out. With that, now kind of bringing us up to date on where we're at as far as this goal. Since that third Friday count, and again, I'm kind of talking about this number one goal here, since that third Friday count, our open enrollment out numbers have dropped down to 248. So we've got a decrease of 3 students who have come back to us or are no longer a resident open enrolling out. And our open enrollment in students have increased by 1 from 96 to 97. So again, both of those trends are both positive. Currently, our student count is at 1147, which means that our open enrollment out numbers represent 21.7% of our students. Or if you flip that, that means that we're retaining 78.3. So we're creeping in on that 80% number that we're shooting for. We're not there yet, but we're trending in the right direction and hoping that we can continue that trend. And then just to let the board and the public know, our administration is working very diligently on communicating with families when there's any kind of indication about them open enrolling out or transferring, or if we feel that there's an alternative option to the traditional classroom or just a better fit for their students. We're actively reaching out to those students and letting them know about some of our options that we have. So kudos to our administration for being actively involved in that as well. Before I get into kind of the priorities to support that goal, any questions on the information that I've shared right now as far as our number one goal on getting more students, our students staying in our district? Okay. Okay, and then just a general update on the 4 different priorities regarding the student well-being. And just an update, we've had all of our students in the, I believe, grades 2 through 12. They have provided input for their courses and classrooms for our teachers to learn from and find the best ways to support those learners within the classroom environment. This first time that we've done this will serve as a baseline. It will help us guide our teachers in providing more engaging content and better ways to keep those students engaged. But we'll use that as a baseline to see, can we make improvements and can we make significant gains in reaching those students as we take additional surveys throughout the course of the year. The next one will be around the semester, okay, in January. Consistent classroom environments. I've shared this with the board before. One of the biggest, not biggest is not the right word, one of the most frequent complaints or concerns that I get, albeit I want to preface that by saying I don't get a lot of concerns, okay, but by far the one that is the most prevalent of those that I get is the lack of consistent discipline in our buildings, in our classrooms. Administration is aware of it, we're working on that, and we're really trying to work administratively on defining what disciplines constitute behavioral write-ups and what consequences go with them and what ages different things look like. So we go from a teaching model to more of a consequence model as students get older. But we are working on that. There's not necessarily a lot to share with you other than that we're actively aware of it. We're actively talking about it at many of our administrative meetings and really trying to make sure that we've addressed this consistent classroom or consistent discipline in the classrooms and across our district. The third priority is our distinguished staff. Again, the board had approved a definition of distinguished staff. Our goal this year was to work on a committee on how that's implemented. We have a committee. There are 11 11 employees plus myself that have met a couple of different times already. We're meeting again on December 18th. As they're working through the implementation process, we've got employees representing almost all of our employee groups. I believe food service we are not able to find a representative from, but we're working towards what does that look like, how do they apply, how are they measured, how often do they have to apply, what happens if they don't meet that criteria, what kind of feedback do they get, that whole process. And I'm hoping that the next time that we give an update on the goals and priorities, we'll have a lot more of those details to share with the board. And then finally, the last priority is our student learning outcomes, gaining academic success. Dr. Johnson had given an update on our school report cards. We know we're trending in the right direction academically. Our staff are continuing to work on that first question in the PLC model. What do we want our students to know? And as we try to accomplish that 100% success of having all of our classes having that basic question in mind by the end of this year, that's our goal. We're working towards that. But I think that the academic growth that we've already seen in our students over the last year is already showing off some of the curriculum work and some of the PLC work that we're doing. So more work to come, a lot of work to come, but that's where we're at. Any questions from the board or anything that the curriculum committee would like to add as they heard about these a couple weeks ago?
One thing I might say is from the various information charts and things that we've received, it seems like after COVID, we're beginning our way up, which was fantastic. So that seems to be the trend now.
We're trending in the right direction, that's for
Yes.
sure. Yep. All right, thank you.
Referendum update.
Okay, let's see if technology is going to cooperate. Give me here 1 second. Okay, there are three attachments. First part I'm going to share with you is this document right here called bid summary. Okay, so if you remember, our board gave our Buildings, Property, and Transportation Committee the authority to approve bid specs and to approve vendors as long as it was a unanimous vote from the committee. If there was any disagreement on who the vendor should be, then that would come to the board for final approval. So all of these were done with unanimous approval from the Buildings and Property Committee, and I would share that all of these were also taking the lowest bid across the board. There were none that we didn't take the lowest bid on. So this page right here, this is a summary. There were 14 different scopes of work, ranging from site work to asphalt to electrical to HVAC, etc. And each one of those scopes had various bids. And I'm going to flip over to the other document that looks like this. And this document shows you the scope of work. Okay, so for scope 1, site work, we only had one person submit a bid. That was Gerke, in the amount of $383,882. And so therefore that was selected. That's shown on the bid summary sheet, and it's highlighted here on this bid tabulation sheet. Other work, like general construction, we had 4 or 5 folks put into bids. Okay, and so this document, the highlighted vendor, is the one at the top of each of the scopes. Again, that is the lowest bid, and that is then summarized on this first document that I had open here, again with the lowest bid, and then over on the far right, try to zoom in here a little bit for you. This was the amount that we had budgeted. This is just the primary school, okay? This was the amount that we had budgeted for construction without contingencies, just over $4.8 million. Bids came in. Remember, we thought that they could be as high as about 1.5 over, knowing that the scope of work at the 5K classrooms went from 2 classrooms to 4 classrooms. The bids came in at a total of $5.2 million, and some change. That put us over budget by $435,000 at the primary school. However, we had this roof savings from the high school roof that we completed this summer in the amount of $981,000. And so when we look at the total scope of where we're at right now related to construction, we are still $543,000 to the good as it relates to budgeted items compared to actual work or bids. This has not dipped into any contingency fund that we have, and it has also not dipped into any bond proceeds that we have. Okay, so we, as a whole, while we're over at the primary school, our total construction bidding up to date is about $543,000 under budget. Okay? There were two alternates that the committee looked at, and one was for conduit runs to the parking lot, putting in the infrastructure so that we can get power for security cameras or other things, maybe a gate, those kinds of things in the future. Grounded Electric put that alternate in at a price of $2,664. That is added onto the bid, so that $5.2 million has to add that $2,664 on it. The other alternate was using grooved type pipe instead of welded pipe. That came in at a savings of $13,500. Nexus had spec'd that out. Grooved type pipe is a lesser quality pipe than the welded pipe. They wanted to scope it out because if we were substantially over budget, we may need to look at doing something a little less quality, okay? The savings that they had there at the $13,500 did not justify using a lower quality in the piping, therefore we did not accept this $13,500 deduct as an alternate. Mr. Huntermer, did I miss anything that you want to share from the buildings and property, or Ms. Troxel?
I just wanted to comment that even though we are recommended the lowest bids, we were very careful to ask Nexus that they had a history of working with these contractors, and they all came highly recommended. So I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, and then the last, any other questions regarding the finances before I get into some site work and what the parking lot and parent drop-off pickup at the primary school looks like? Seeing nothing, I'll move on. Of course, you're not married to that. If you need to jump backwards, we can certainly do that as long as we're on this agenda item. Okay, so the third PDF, it's labeled parking lot at RCPS. One of our goals was, at all of our buildings, but we're working on the primary school at this point in time. I don't know how to, there we go, hide that. Was to get a safer, more efficient parent pickup, drop-off, and bus pickup, drop-off at all of the locations. One of our first goals was to try to get a system that allowed all of our buses, as many as 21 buses, to be at any given site at any given time. Right now we have to do our buses at the end of the day in waves, where we have half of them at one building, half of them at another building, and they swap. That's extra time on the buses for students, that's inefficiency for staff. So if we can create a model where all three of our buildings, high school is already able to do that with the bus lot that they have out here, but the other two buildings, having all of our buses there, that will allow for greater flexibility in the future and more efficiency. Okay, so that was one of our goals. The other goal that we had was we were trying to eliminate the need for parental vehicles and buses having a lot of crossing through traffic. Okay, so we tried to keep areas as segregated as possible. It wasn't entirely possible at the primary school and nor the intermediate school when we get to that, given the site constraints that we have, but we've got a really good model in place. Okay, so this is the primary school. The top of the map is to the west. The right of the map is to the north. You have Bowman Drive on the bottom of it. And so this is the front of the primary school. So if I can kind of talk you through what this would look like at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, and what the idea is. In the morning, okay, parents will have a couple of different options if they are transporting their students to school. They will have the park and drop, okay, where parents can simply park their vehicle, students get out of the vehicle on their own, safe passageway to a sidewalk, and then they enter the building on their own. The other is more of a park and escort, where parents will park in a parking lot and then escort their children into either the various playground area or into the building. This happens more at our younger levels, but it certainly happens at the other levels. Okay, so if you this area here in front, if you can see my cursor, I think you can kind of see it up there. This area here in front, which is in the front of the building, in the morning, this will become a parent drop-off. Okay, for parents to use this, which is currently a bus lane right now, parents to be able to come up, pull along the front of the building. Their children can exit out the passenger's side door or the rear passenger side to the right onto the sidewalk, and then they can just enter the building. This is not meant for parking a vehicle and parents getting out of the car. Okay, this is meant for students able to do that on their own. I will add some of the revisions here. One of the problems that we have with our current setup at the primary school is that a bus cannot enter from the south on Bowman Drive heading north, and they cannot make a left-hand turn and do a full 180 in the current configuration. And so we had to expand this entrance area right over here to the north so that a bus could make that turn and make the turn back in front of the building, as well as ensuring that our fire trucks could enter the front of the building as well. With that being said, if I could just zoom in on this section momentarily, we've restructured so that students walking on the west side of Bowman Drive on the sidewalk coming from Wedgwood or the apartment complexes or the trailer courts down in that area, they're walking from the north. They no longer will walk across this entrance. Instead, we will have a sidewalk before the entrance that the students can walk up, enter on a pedestrian cross path, and then follow the sidewalk in. This pedestrian cross path should be fairly limited in traffic because the only people who would enter this small parking lot here on the north side of the building would be our staff. There would be no parents or buses or other transportation in this lot. So that should allow for students to walk that are walking to school to have a safe route, and our parents to be able to drop students off and drop them off in front of the building. Moving to the south side and kind of the reconfiguration of the parking lot itself, if parents are going to drop an escort, they would enter down here on the south side of Bowman Drive onto the property. They would stay to the left and they would enter this parking lot area that's almost entirely enclosed by sidewalk and concrete curb. There's an entrance here to the east and an exit here on the west. Parents would be able to come into this parking lot as well as staff, and they would be able to park their vehicles. They would be able to get out, take the sidewalk around, whichever way, closest sidewalk that they have, to this pedestrian parking lot or crosswalk here, and they would then be able to cross over and get to the sidewalk, and parents would then be able to escort their children, again, either into the building or to the designated drop-off area. Parents could then walk back across, come back to their vehicle, and then exit out here and exit out on Bowman Drive, either to the north or to the south. Buses, as they're dropping off students, they will enter the same entrance as the parent park and escort. They will then veer to the right, and they will enter this bus-only area. In the morning, we don't anticipate there being more than 4 or 5 buses arriving at any one time, and so most of the buses would simply line up along this most northern lane, letting students off, again, to the right, to the north. They could then exit off of the sidewalk and proceed to their designated areas. Buses would then make the loop around and come back and either go to the next building or, if they're done with their route, head back to wherever they need to go to. So that's kind of what the beginning of the day looks like. Any questions on kind of morning routines? There's still some details we have to work out, but that's the general flow that we would have there. Yes.
I guess my only concern now that we're entering the winter months is that for the people that keep the sidewalks and the roadways clear, is there sufficient space to deposit snow away from the walkways and curbs? Because curbs can be a problem.
Yep, that's a
when
great,
it's plowing, so
Yep.
I'm wondering how, if we've considered the person doing the plowing and where they're gonna deposit the snow and that, so that,
very much so. That's a great question. Heavy consideration in making sure that our maintenance staff and our snow removal people could do that. All the sidewalks are wide enough for us to be able to get our brushes and plows down, and all of the parking lot, we can continue to move snow to the southern edge of the property and deposit it accordingly. So all of that was definitely taken into consideration and devised accordingly.
because that'd be a major problem otherwise.
Yes, I agree. Okay, then at the end of the day, okay, so we will have all of our buses there, and so at that time, our buses will be parked in one of a couple of different areas. There's 3 lanes of buses that will each hold 4 buses. That'll give us 12, and then 4 more will be parked along this western side of the parking lot. Again, all in this segregated bus-only lane. And then at the end of the day, since parents will not be dropping their kids off at the end of the day, this front of the building, this will be used for what we anticipate are special transportation. They're little shorter buses. We can then have those that need that special transportation, all of those buses parked right in front of the building, and those students can get escorted on there. Parents would still come into this parking lot here. They would park and then either come and pick up their students at the designated area. That's likely what would happen. Again, they would walk across the crosswalk and go pick up their students at the designated area. Buses would then be able to all depart at the same time. We would likely have some adult cross guards at these entrances and exits to avoid intermixing of parent vehicles and buses, so that all of them can stay on time and get to their next location, whether they're starting the drop-off routes or if they've got to go to another building. So that's kind of what the general route would look like. Nexus has worked with a lot of school districts that have this multi-lane bus route. No students are ever walking in between buses. They all walk down to the crosswalk. Again, nice wide sidewalks for them to then walk down the sidewalk and load the bus from the right side of the bus from the sidewalk. So never students going across the sidewalks. And they'll have some landscape, natural barriers, bushes and things like that to deter people walking across the crosswalks this way. There's sidewalks and there's some landscaping here in this narrow fringe here on the right, if that makes sense. So that's generally what it will look like as far as parental pickup and drop-off. I think it will be much more efficient. I think it'll be much safer, and I think we'll be able to have a lot of flexibility in the future moving forward. We do have a little bit of floodplain here. Anything to the map left of this mostly solid line is floodplain, and then this dashed line is flood fringe. Nexus is working with the city and the DNR. There was, I believe what's called an H&H study done that the DNR is required. Basically says that if we're moving dirt, we can't disrupt the natural flow of water, okay, to where it needs to go. While there are some areas that are getting excavated, the net effect of where we're adding dirt and subtracting dirt is essentially zero. And so therefore there is no real change to the runoff water. We're just removing some high spots, filling it in with some low spots, and having that natural slope away from the buildings and the parking lot. Other than that, again, this section right here, these are the 4 classrooms that are going to go under a lot of renovation. Essentially 2 of the walls are going to be removed, some of the roofing will be removed, and then those are going to be entirely new classrooms that are built there. And then there's some asphalt here on the playground that will be updated as well. So that's generally the site work. Again, just kind of a general overview, but I do know our parents have expressed concerns over the parent pickup and drop off, and so I wanted to spend a little extra time on that with the board and have it available for the public as well. Any questions?
I would
imagine that signage is part of the project to make sure that both entrances are well signed so the cars stay in level with the buses so that there's not cross traffic.
Yes, also a great point, and also something that has been considered. They'll work with the city to get the proper permits for anything entering Bowman Drive, and then anything within our parking lot, we can put signage up as we see fit.
And is there consideration for having traffic control for the first couple weeks?
There's likely going to be more traffic control the first couple of weeks, but having some traffic control throughout the entire year, probably having some staff have some duties out there to help direct traffic and keep everybody safe. Thank you.
Those 3 additional spots closest to Bowman Drive, would the students load up on that curb, or would they just be awaiting the 12 buses to pull out so they can pull in?
You're talking kind of right in this area right here?
Yes, it looks like they're spaced for 3 buses there.
Yeah, I think there's actually 4. I think they've got one that can be right here on this curb, if I'm not mistaken, but it might just be 3. I'm going to leave that up to both our CRO from a traffic and safety standpoint, as well as our administration to determine what works best for them procedurally, if they hold the kids and then take them, or if the students are there with an adult staff member. I don't know the exact answer, but that would be something that may change actually once we see it in action. Okay, thank you.
All right, 2025 early graduates.
Okay, give me 1 second to back over to the right page. Okay, so this is the last information and discussion items. We have 6 students that have applied, have put their criteria in for, or their application, if you will, to have early graduation. They're looking to do so after Q2, which is in January. These students can rescind this. It's just, again, letting the board know this. They may elect to just take electives and be a full-time student and continue to participate in extracurricular activities, because if they graduate, they can't. But these are the students that, assuming they meet all the criteria, and of course if they don't meet all the criteria, they would not be allowed to graduate early. But if they do, they would be eligible, and they may look at graduating at the end of the first semester or the second quarter. High school admin, did I miss anything that you want to add? Okay. Again, just information for the board, but happy to answer any questions. Okay, thank you.
Action items, revision of policy 9700.01, advertising and commercial activities.
Okay, so 9700.01 is the advertising policy for the board. The only revisions to the policy itself, they are highlighted there in green on the PDF, and that is, as soon as it loads, the right to terminate as the board sees fit. If they enter into an advertising agreement and they just a business or some sort of, starts selling something or doing something that the board doesn't meet our educational goals, they can certainly terminate that. That's the main section there in green. That's also very similar to our naming rights policy. And then the other slight adjustment is under the general advertising guidelines, just adding the in addition to administrative guidelines, and then just referencing those administrative guidelines, which is the other PDF that is attached, which outlines, and our goal here is to start, if the board approves, to start in just a couple of areas initially, and that is the outfield fence of baseball, the outfield fence of the softball, and then some interior signage around the scoreboards in the gymnasium. And so you'll see windscreen sponsorships, as well as dye bond or Alumilite panels. In the dye bond panels would be interior, the windscreens would be exterior, and those would be sold to advertisers in a nice uniform look. And then on the second page of that has some general guidelines on solicitation of advertising. Activities director will kind of oversee this. Any group would have the ability, just because it's a baseball diamond doesn't mean Coach Lemke and the baseball team has the rights to go sell $70,000 worth of advertising and the baseball team gets all of that. Any of our clubs or organizations would have the ability to sell those spots, and then that they would divide that up over 30% would go to the selling group, 70% would go into a fund, which will help the district fund large expenses, okay, that they just don't budget for. Goalpost goes down, right, a volleyball standard or a black backboard gets broken. Those kinds of things as it relates to activities in athletics. We would now have a fund that could help fund some of those bigger expenses through the use of advertising. This went to both the policy committee as well as the buildings, property, and transportation committee. Mr. Hunter, you have anything to add there, or Mr. Baleen from policy?
No, sir.
Okay. Otherwise, that's the general gist. Administrative guidelines. Those can kind of get tweaked as we see fit, but the board certainly needs to approve the revisions to the policy, and part of those revisions is to accept the administrative guidelines and the reference to them.
Great. Is there a motion to accept the Buildings, Property, and Transportation Committee and the Policy Committee's recommendation to approve revisions to 9700.01 advertising and commercial activities as presented, effective immediately?
I'll make that.
Motion made by Mr. Huntemer. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Troxel. Discussion? Ms. Troxel?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Aye.
Conference realignment plan to the WIAA.
Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this unless you have specific questions, in which case Ms. Selby is probably the best to answer that. This was brought as information at the last board meeting. Nothing has changed on it since that time. Essentially, this is a 4-conference realignment, which would then put Richland Center in a 10-team conference as opposed to the 6-team conference it's currently in. And if all of the schools and the school boards endorse this, then the conference would take that to the WIA for approval, and looking at this will be a 2029 implementation, I believe is what you said?
I believe.
That would be the timeline. So, again, nothing's changed, but happy to answer any questions if anything came up since our last meeting.
What is the anticipated resolution, I guess, through the conference as far as getting all the schools on board for this? Is it pretty much set and ready to go, it just needs WIA approval? Or?
So there's a lot of process, but the first step is all 6 of our conference schools wanted to make sure the school boards were in agreement that we can move forward with it. Then there are 30 schools total impacted. The next step is going to be to, most of them have seen this. Jamie and Joey presented to the small schools already. Didn't get a lot of feedback. Some are indifferent, some are like, why? But those schools would then have the ability to say the whys they would or would not support it and speak at the WIAA about that. Part of how you must present is any school affected, you must have a solution for them, which is why it expands beyond just, we want these 4 schools with us. You have to have a plan that provides solutions for other schools. For example, there's a proposal right now at the WIAA for our football conference that New Glarus was requesting to move out of the football conference we're currently in, but they provided no solution. So we are hopeful that it will not pass because they did not provide any solution. And that's what the WIA expects when you bring it forward.
I'll make the motion then to approve the conference realignment proposal and advance it according to WIAA procedures as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bailey. Discussion? Mrs. Dickman?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Make the motion to move into closed session pursuant under statutes 19.851C and/or F as appropriate to consider employment, promotion, and compensation of employees for purposes of discussing individual employee hiring, and administrator evaluations, and 19.851G as appropriate to discuss legal advice and strategies, and Wisconsin statutes 118.125 to discuss student open enrollment applications and individual pupil information related to those applications. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Dickman. Discussion? Aye.
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 Thank you.